I'm Jason from the YouTube comments section, and I have written the world's second ever Worst Movies on YouTube fanfiction, and I'm here to share that with you. But before that, there's a few things I'd like to say. First and foremost, a couple of thank yous. Thank you to Gutter and Bird and all the other characters that I've taken from YouTube for this story. Thank you for inspiring me to get creative and make something fun and put it out there in the world too. Also, thank you to my mother, who hand knitted me this awesome cardigan sweater. Next, a disclaimer. This is a fictional story. It is meant for shock and comedic value. It contains violence, adult situations. It's a horror story. I don't really want to give you too much of a clue as to what's going on, because, well, the twist happens by about the second sentence, so if I give you much, it's just going to give it all away. As I step completely out of frame. So with that in mind, we're just here to have a good time, maybe a laugh, maybe an ick moment. I encourage you to do what you want to get a little spooky yourself. Have a drink, have a smoke, get spooky. The summer's heat had never cooled during the night. It was still a sweltering 85 degrees, with humidity as thick as the mosquitoes, in a North Carolina town which had about as many residents as letters in its name. The birds had not yet woken up yet at 3 in the morning, but Ron Koontz had. Today was a big day. Today he was starting work on his next movie. He'd been struck with new inspiration recently, more than he'd felt in decades. He'd felt younger, sprier, better. Everything was better, since he'd found that book at the gun show. It's a book of ancient Christian wisdom. Well, more like a self-published 80-page pamphlet, hidden for centuries by the church. Secret, suppressed knowledge of how to get God to speak directly to you. It told stories about the first Christians to spread to Europe and Africa, as far as India, and the practices they had before the church had conquered everyone. His preparations had taken him months and cost him hundreds of dollars, but today, Ron Koontz would carry out the ritual, gain true enlightenment, and speak directly to him. Then, he would make his new movie, a masterpiece unlike any others. He'd make a movie about a private investigator solving a murder. Ron excitedly changed from his sleeping attire of blue jeans and a flannel shirt to a fresh going-out getup of blue jeans and a flannel shirt, as fast as a man his age could manage. He placed the book at the bottom of a familiar blue canvas bag and chuckled to himself as he dug through his medicine cabinet, and then the rest of his house putting things in his bag, the last of which was his trademark wig. This is my crime bag. Ron's imagination took over as he limped down the hill to his workroom shed. He'd used that footage of him running up that same lightly wooded hill from years ago to portray this part of the film. It was some of his favorite footage, even if it lasted forever. Every tool in the shed had been meticulously prepared for this day, the day that Ron Koontz would speak directly to God and receive divine direction for his directorial dreams. Medicine bundles of sage and tobacco and other herbs were placed at auspicious locations. Icons of many religions dotted the walls. A bindle of meth and a pipe. 2 gallon-sized jars reeked, full of gold and amber liquid, the product of years' work growing Amanita muscaria feeding them to horses, the closest thing he had to reindeer, and collecting their urine. Drills, chisels, forceps, cauterizing tools gleamed, brand new and sterilized in plastic. A dentist chair, bolted to the floor, with an extension welded onto the headrest, a head-immobilizing halo with 2 rings of bolts. In the pre-dawn quiet, Ron sat in his dental chair, screwed all 10 bolts into his scalp and into his skull. He sliced and cauterized a square of flesh from his scalp, the hairless skin sizzling like bacon. With a woodworking bit on a drill zip-tied to his homemade halo, Ron drilled a 1-inch hole through his skull, and removed the fragment with tweezers. He then alternated drinking from the gallon of God's own equine piss and pouring it into his trepanation-exposed brain. Minutes later, Ron's phone vibrated into his pocket. Dixie played from the tinny speaker. The screen lit up from an update from YouTube. Worst Movies on YouTube had uploaded their Wednesday video. Through what could only have been divine inspiration, it was a Cult of Koontz episode. Single tap and the video played. As Ron chuckled along with his 2 biggest fans, snarking like assholes at his work, the powerful psychedelics took hold. Ron poured more urine into his brain and mouth. He wanted some coffee. Why didn't he bring coffee? Drank more horse piss. With everything he'd possibly need and more in his crime bag already by the door, he stopped by the house to kiss this gorgeous lady goodbye. She hadn't left the bed in years, not even once since Ron dug her up and put her back there. Ron's mind played out the next scene for him. A stock shot of his maroon Pontiac Grand Am, back in better days. Then a second shot of the same car at a different time of day. As he drove, following the smartphone's step-by-step instructions, he daydreamed more, disassociated more, and wrote his movie on the fly. The mushrooms let his dreams and creativity dominated his active thoughts while he drove. He had quite a few extra hours to complete the 10-hour drive in order to show up on set during the filming. If his private investigator skills were up to the task. Ron's senses blended, hearing the motion of his car, feeling sensations of touch as he alternated drinks of coffee and urine. He smelled the memories of his old footage. Highway, fuel up, fast food, and Ron was lucid for a moment. He hung a jacket and hat from a tripod, set his camera up on its own, pressed play, and walked into frame. With his black wig on, he was the investigator. Cut a promo, thunderkicked the coat on a stick, walked out of frame, stopped the camera, and drank more horse piss. Back on the road, an unknown time later, it was hot. Ron's head itched, and he poked his exposed brain through the wig for a spell. The hallucinogen rushed in again. The yellow wig represented the killer, as it always had, and Ron became one again when he put it on. He also had an electric blue bob cut wig, just like the one Mean Gene Okerlund wore in Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo. He had no idea how he was going to use that yet. The shade of a grove of trees, above a bench and a roadside park, buzzed with God's blessing so hard that Ron felt it from the road. Trucker cap on his blonde wig, Ron set his blue bag on the table, pressed play on his camera, and stepped into frame. The killer talked slower than Ron usually did. He began to lay out his plan to the camera for several minutes, until the effervescent sound of a child's laughter bubbled, like carbonated soda pop on his tongue, and into his brand new third eye. He turned off the camera and sat, silently, watching a mother and daughter take their puppy to the park. Ron re-aimed the camera, turned it back on, walked into frame. Cooed, southern drawl, to the mother and child about the puppy, played up his age and limp. The mother never looked around, until Ron jammed his Vietnam issue K-bar between her ribs. Muffling her scream with a handkerchief, slipping the K-bar deeper, all that was a practice motion. Silencing the child with the cloth and not the knife was new. 3-pound Pomeranian puppy choked by the full length of its leash as it tried to escape. Ron walked back into the camera frame and shut it off. Blood continued to ooze from the hole drilled in Ron's scalp and skull. Dawn broke. Time passed. How long does it take to get from North Carolina to Pittsburgh? Especially if you're tripping on mushroom-laden horse piss with a hole in your skull. Terry? Ron Koontz pondered the possibility that he might not have free will at all. As it turned out, Ron's detective skills were on par with his auto-trepanation ones. He parked his car within view of Gutter's house. He split his Xanax between the girl and the dog and waited. Congealing blood oozed its way through the blonde wig and scabbed black. The child passed out. Bird arrived. The dog might be dead. Ron wasn't sure. But he grabbed it, along with everything else he'd brought, and ambled up to the door. The gray concrete sidewalk squirming like that wasn't helping one bit. For the next 2 minutes, every aspect of Ron's plan played out exactly as God told him that it would. Gutter and Bird welcomed him instantly. He didn't question the sleeping child or the story that his granddaughter had wet herself and fallen asleep. The elated duo practically begged Ron to sit for an interview, and agreed instantly to let Ron tape the event on his own camera too. The 3 men now sat, 2 of them recording a very different event than the third. Ron had split a morphine a few hours earlier between the child and the dog, and it was at this point the dog stopped breathing. The child, just barely, not. Ron was somehow both aware of his physical presence in the chair and watching from the angle of the camera behind him as he picked up his crime bag from the floor and put it in his lap atop the drugged child. With his right hand, he opened the bag. With his left, he found the K-bar knife, raised it to the girl's ribs. Ron talked slowly for dramatic effect as he revealed the remaining contents of his medium-sized crime bag along with his demands. What it is that Bird and Gutter could save the life of the child by taking some non-trademark generic erectile dysfunction pills and play a game of soggy cookie, with the winner getting to eat the cookie and the loser getting to eat a bullet. Before Ron could finish his demands, Gutter left out his seat, his hand outstretched toward the bottle of pills. Ron's hand twitched with decades of practice. He drew and fired the pistol from his pocket. In an instant, spattering blood, exploding from Gutter's armpit and chest. Gutter's screams loud enough to register in everyone's stunned eardrums, but not what Ron Koontz said as he gesticulated with the knife in his left hand. But before Ron even managed to finish saying, "What it is," at Ron Koontz's speed, Bird had dove into action. The sleeping child didn't stir from her drug haze as Bird hurled his body between the knife and her, nor did she notice at all when Bird screamed as he grabbed the blade of the knife, nor when all 3 toppled over in the metal folding chair and cluttered to the ground. It took Gutter only 1 pace to cross the room. Bird was saying something. Ron had dropped the pistol and had scattered in the fall. Gutter kicked him in the ribs. Elderly bones crunched. He stomped, kicked again. The man stopped moving. Bleeding from his chest and ribs and streaking with adrenaline, Gutter walked into the frame of Ron Koontz's camera. As he reached behind the camera to press the button to stop recording, Gutter smirked and snickered. "At least this motherfucker finally shot some new footage." Afterward, Bird and Gutter were not charged criminally, as their actions were deemed in self-defense, with multiple sources of video evidence. Ron Koontz stood trial for 2 counts of murder and 1 charge of cruelty to animals, was found mentally incompetent to stand trial, and served the remainder of his life in a prison for the criminally insane. The child was returned to her father, but her trauma wrote its own horror story.